Like a badge. What's the joke?
A bubble light too, please.
Oh, wow.
I'll take the bubble light. You can take the badge. Thanks.
Person property the gavel. So Google. Am I on? Give you. It's back. Oh.
Okay.
Shot.
Right now. So this evening, I'm going to count the Board of Commissioners for Monday, July 25th, 2022. Please join me in a moment of silence as we open the meeting. Thank you. Commissioner J. Farrell, we'd love to call on you to lead us in prayer.
My pleasure. Yes, would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Have your agenda before you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for proposal?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Commissioner Shipp. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We have under citizens matters, the first matter being the manager's update, and I believe this is the first time we have had the manager remote from the rest of the board live. So welcome, Chris Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't hear y'all, ironically enough. I've got a few updates for y'all this evening. First and foremost, with our GAC project at the water plant, we're very pleased to announce that we will be operationally go live as this week. With that project, we have continued to battle the supply chain issues, but our water plant staff and CDM Smith have been really good about working together to find solutions to get us to operational day one, even if we have some other things to attend to on the back end. So we continue to make progress there and look forward to having operational day one this week. Relatedly, as we talked about last month, and just to remind folks, we will continue forward until Labor Day, and I will certainly make any other announcement if we need to adjust that with the Chatham Marketplace to continue to provide water there. I will be working with our public information officer, Mr. Colby Sawyer, on working with some communications to assist the Chatham Marketplace folks and having that eventually dwindle as we as we go live with the Fast Track GAC project. We will then cease the Chatham Marketplace water delivery there. So, but we understand that it takes some time to recondition the populace. So we'll be working with Colby and certainly Evan and his folks at the Chatham Marketplace, and appreciate their efforts there. Additionally, one thing that I want to put into the minds of the board and any public that may be interested is, as we go forward with the Fast Track GAC project, we've discussed in the past water conservation measures to ensure that all the water that we are treating, it's what I would call expensive water, is being handled accordingly. So we will probably have that as agenda item on August 8th, potentially, or at some point in August, to consider potential policy towards that, or whether we want to do some water conservation measures to make the most of that GAC project. I'm pulling some data together with Corey and our folks there to make the best of that. Let's see here. We continue forward on our efforts with the Sanford utility merger. Our staff and Sanford staff, as well as the staff of Freeze and Nichols, been working well together. We have a scope of work drafted. We're still looking to get final consent on that between the two parties, being us and the city of Sanford. But what we're looking to do there is have something where we have a deliverable to the board in about 90 days, and then a final report on that in 180 days. And these are kind of what we were calling kind of the go, no go decision points. With the first step being looking at the benefits of the merger. So kind of Pittsburgh by itself, Pittsburgh with the merger, and particularly, and that's more introspective on our side of that, certainly, to present to the boards and show what the benefit of the potential merger there. So just wanted to provide a progress report on that, and we're continuing to work together, and I anticipate we'll have greater deliverables in the coming days. We also, I'm very pleased to announce that we have been working with Chatham Park investors on a downtown office space. Many folks have noted that Teresa Thompson, who was our former planning director, has now shifted over to a downtown development director position. Very excited to have her in that capacity as the town looks to invest both with our resources and our both in personnel and dollars into the downtown district. So very pleased to have her in that spot, and have been working together with Tim and Bubba with Chatham Park investors on the town having the assignment of the lease of that space that Chatham Park has held in downtown beside the barbershop. So that will be Teresa's primary office. It'll also have a little drop zone in there for commissioners and the mayor to attend to constituent concerns and have a presence in downtown as well. So really want to thank Tim and Bubba personally for allowing us to use that space. We've got some mechanics of the lease to go through, and I anticipate that'll be on your next agenda, but I wanted to announce that because I think that's a really exciting thing for us, and really kind of being the embodiment of our investment in the downtown area. The last update I have for you this evening is regard to the North Carolina state of emergency, which is related to the COVID pandemic. We as a town lifted the state of emergency a number of months ago, but the state has remained in a state of emergency. So they are now, Governor Cooper announced that they're going to lift that on August 15th. And what that'll do, it'll adjust a little bit how we run our meetings. We won't be a major difference now that the board's back in person, but based on what we've seen from advice of legal counsel across the state, as well as the school of government, that it will prohibit any board members from participating remotely, which is kind of a pre-pandemic open meetings law. So certainly staff like myself, I'm not included in that, but for the board, in order to participate, it is our understanding that you'll have to be there in person with the remainder of your board, and there will be no remote meetings allowed. Additionally, and one thing that we'll have to consider, and I'll be working with the folks at the Ag Center as well about how we accommodate this, is that we can have no restrictions on the public attending the meetings or not. So we'll have to be full open meeting to the public. anyone who wishes to be there. So that will be lifted on August 15th. So what my recommendation to the board would be is that we stay status quo for the August 8th meeting, allow staff and the board both to consider the impact of this, seek other advice if new advice emerges, and then really look for our August 22nd meeting to roll out any required measures that we're required to do with the lifting of the state of emergency. So more to come on that one, but did want to make both the board and the public aware that there'll be some slight changes. I anticipate the board will continue to desire to stream. There's no prohibition on us streaming, so we can continue to provide that service, but we will shift to more in person now that the North Carolina state of emergency will be lifted here in a couple weeks. So I appreciate your ears for a lengthy update, but I'll be happy to answer any questions right now if you have any.
Thank you. My updates and concerns are as follows. As you know, I'm a member of the Chatham County Climate Change Advisory Committee, and that will meet this Thursday. It has been a very busy time, partly because we don't meet but once in July. Of course, our Summerfest was canceled in beginning of July due to stormy weather forecasts. I had attended a Chamber of Commerce event at Starlight Mead on the 30th of July and during the period, 30th of June. And during the period, I cut ribbons at the plant and at the Chatham County Democratic Party headquarters. The manager discussed the new office, and Teresa and I have met downtown at the new office and talked about details of that. So I'm really looking forward to being there to be able to meet constituents and just be a little bit closer into town. Somewhere in all of this, I've managed to spend 6 days in Phoenix, Arizona. And if you think it's hot here, it was 118 the day that we went to see the Grand Canyon. And you can say all you want to about the fact that it's dry heat, but when it's 118, it doesn't make any difference if it's dry. Got to see elk and beautiful houses and, of course, the majesty of the Grand Canyon. Had a very interesting event, which I think is the first of its kind. The Farrington Newcomers Association came to the historic courthouse and were treated to an event which was called Pittsburgh Past, Present, and Future. And Corky Harris, Walter Harris was the past. And of course, I'm going to forget her name. Debbie Addleton was the present, and I was the future. And we had a very, very good time. I think there were probably between 50 and 75 newcomers to the Farrington area who learned a bit more about where they have moved and what the opportunities for the past, for the present and the future might be. On the 21st of July, I attended both the Chatham Conservation Partnership meeting and then, which was represented by both the towns and the county. It was a very interesting meeting on sustainable development, and Teresa Thompson and I worked together on that. And then as soon as we got out of that, we were into the meeting with the water supervisor of the Greensboro water facility, and that was a very fruitful meeting. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. And then today I finally got a hold of Bill Davidson with the GFL, and we'll be talking more about that in just a moment. But I would like to have an idea. Would there be interest in going to I mean, I think we can finally get this tour of the Sunoco facility arranged. And I admit that field trips to recycling facilities or landfills may not be really high on your list, but I think it could be very interesting for us as we negotiate our contract with them. And so if you could be thinking about that and let me know this evening how many of you would like to attend that meeting. We'll have to open it up if it is one of those situations where we have everybody interested in going. But if we are two commissioners and the mayor, then we don't have to structure a special called meeting, but we'll see who would like to attend that. So that's a lot of things. So now I will call on Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin for her update.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Perry. I certainly do appreciate it. I can't top any of that. So, the one thing I can say is that I did attend the Greensboro with the Greensboro officials and the Pittsburgh officials. That was a great meeting, and Commissioner Shipp, I'm sure, will discuss that in further, but it was very productive, and I think it needs to be an ongoing situation.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bonitz.
Nothing to report from me, but I do have three requests of staff. At least three of us, I understand, are planning to attend the August 16th Downtown Vision event that Teresa Thompson is planning. And so I would propose that staff do whatever is needed to keep us in line with the open meetings law, public notice, or what have you. Commissioner Shipp, I think you suggested that a special meeting designation might be appropriate. Mr. Kennedy, you already spoke about the Chatham Marketplace and the transition there. I do have a question about that. I think at one point you had indicated you had negotiated with the manager for a 1 month overlap. Is that right? Something like an end of August termination for the free water program at the Chatham Marketplace?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Bonitz. When Evan and I were happened to discuss this a couple weeks ago or several weeks ago now, and we know that people have grown accustomed to coming to the marketplace, and so what we're trying to do is once we go live at the plant and everything appears to be abundantly good, we know that there will be probably a day here or there where the plant shuts down just for training and such with our professionals at the plant. So in order to cover some of that timeline, we don't think there's really any exposure there, but we have talked about we're going to run the program through Labor Day. So when everyone comes back from that Labor Day holiday, I would say beginning that Tuesday morning, we will effectively cease the program there unless something changes, but that's our plan for now.
Thank you. When I was sitting out there on Sunday, actually one of the staffers requested that if we can publish an analysis of the water post GAC filter, that would be informative to the customers as they come through during that month-long transition period. I'm also curious to ask if we might have an update soon on the status of the UDO parking lot items for the tree protection ordinance and the sustainable development incentive. Those were much bigger items, as I recall, and I think that staff have been working on them very diligently, but if we could just get an update sometime soon, I'd appreciate that. And forgive me if it's already in the look ahead.
Commissioner Bonitz, on that, the sustainable one is in the look ahead. We've been working with Steve, our planner one, and we have a contract with a third party to help us vet the policy. Steve has done a good job and got us, I would say, probably 85% of the way there. But we're going through a vetting process with a third party reviewer, just to make sure that the industry professionals that would apply this, it works for them as well. So we anticipate to have this on your agenda very soon. With the tree coverage area, there's been some state law change and we're preempted in many ways with that. So I would say that's a longer term thing, because our interpretation is that we are preempted by state law of requiring tree coverage area on private property. So the sustainable incentives will be on your docket very soon. I'm anticipating a set to at one of the August meetings for a September review by this board. But again, that's dependent on that third party review and how quickly we can get that to the planning board, as they're the proceeding review prior to us bringing that to the Board of Commissioners. And again, with the trees, certainly I'll review that with our planning staff, but it's my understanding that we're preempted by state law from passing anything with regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Farrell.
PBA did not meet this month, so they'll be back on in August, but other than that, I don't have anything.
Commissioner Shipp.
Sure. As we said on July 21st, we did the joint meeting with Greensboro, and that was great. That was the second meeting with them. First in-person meeting, we did a joint at the end of May. We did a Zoom with them. So good cooperation forming there. We were hoping to do a tour of the plant, but for a good reason, they were filling the GAC and the vessels that day, so we weren't able to actually go do the tour. So we will have them down again to tour the plant in operation. We talked about the latest, the Bardak incident that sort of started this coordination with them in earnest. And then also talked about a joint application for SRF funding for treatment of 1,4-dioxane specifically. So continue to work with them on that, and it was a really productive meeting. On Sunday, July 31st, I'm going to be starting the what's called the Advanced Leadership Corps at the UNC School of Government. And so that's a week-long program there that I'll report back how that was. And then just mention again the Downtown Vision Forum, August 16th, here at the Ag Center from 6 to 8 p.m. And Teresa's putting that together, and that'll be a really good kickoff to renewed efforts downtown. And then just wanted to mention too, there's at the Pittsburgh Library right now, there's a 100-county quilt that took 17 years to make. It was originally done to celebrate the opening of the women's hospital in the children's hospital. And then since then, it's been on a tour around the state. And I got connected with it through that course at UNC actually, but that's on display at the library. And there's actually 2 from Chatham County on there. So pretty interesting to see. And then just in terms of concerns, I'm curious who is responsible for the maintenance of the planters in the circle, the new planters in the circle, because they're getting overgrown. And I don't know if that's us or DOT or, it's a good feature of the new circle, but something to keep up on as well for maintenance.
And Commissioner Shipp, with the maintenance there, our team in Public Works trimmed the RIP back. And it appears when we trimmed that back, some of the invasives took root, and photosynthesis prevailed on that. So I'll relay that on, and I've seen that myself, and I don't know what our regular schedule is, but I'll discuss that with Adam Pickett, and we'll get some better attention to that.
Okay, yeah, and not a huge deal. I was more curious before it gets out of control. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Vose.
I don't have any updates as far as TARPO or the Art Council are concerned. We haven't had any meetings since we've last met. But by way of concern, I wanted to ask, or simply say that I'd like for us to discuss the Sanford Utility Merger Project as a board more than we are currently, something sooner than 90 or 180 days. I feel like this is a very important project for us, and I think I myself would benefit from discussion, and I feel like we as a board would. And I would like something more real time than we're having right now.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I think several of us are nodding and agreeing. That would be excellent. All right. As we go into public comment here, I would like to introduce a new reporter with the Chatham News and Record. Meta is with us tonight, and we welcome you. And if there's anything that you need from this board or staff, just let us know, please. I did leave out one thing from my fairly lengthy list of things that I had done, but on July the 22nd, I was asked to offer a welcome to the statewide meeting of the Daughters of the American Revolution, in light of the fact that there's a new chapter which has been formed here in Chatham County. I did not know that they are the largest women's volunteer organization in the world. And they listed a number of projects, including the donation of books to Horton Middle School and around the schools that celebrated George Moses Horton. They also do other work with veterans and with the communities and schools. So at last check, there were no people signed up for speaking to the board. Is that still the case, Mr. Manager, or?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. I have not received any requests for public comment this evening.
Very good. No public comments, so we proceed then to consent agenda. There are 9 items on the consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion for action on the consent agenda, or in the alternative, to modify that agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All 9 items, Commissioner Shipp?
Yes.
Thank you. You've heard the motion from Commissioner Shipp. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. There are no public hearings this evening or old business, and so we are now into new business to discuss Chatham Parkway South and the roadway project acceleration. And are you going to lead us or start leading us on this, Mr. Kennedy, or?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I will get us kicked off. I know there are some folks in the room that are there to support in the conversation. In addition to myself, we have obviously Mr. Misc, and then I believe Mr. David Mason, Tim Smith, and Eric Vernon are there on behalf of Chatham Park investors. So I'll go over a little bit of where we're at with this in terms of the conversation, how we got here today, and then what's kind of changed since we last spoke about this, and then really allow the board to open this up and allow myself or those in the room to answer any questions you may have. For the board's recollection, the public's recollection, we last had this on your agenda on June 13th. This was a miscellaneous item on that agenda. This effort first started in around February of 2022, as DOT was going through its prioritization or reprioritization of projects that were funded in the STIP. And so what we kind of allowed DOT to go through their process, go through the prioritization. And what we're looking to do is accelerate Chatham Parkway South. And one of the requirements of that, while we waited on prioritization, is the project must be funded in the STIP in order to be accelerated. There's statutory allowance to accelerate projects. And so staff has worked with the folks at Chatham Park in their representation to draft a series of documents in order to facilitate the acceleration. And so what we had on June 13th was the initial inspection of those documents to allow the board and the public to review those, to give you all time, one, to converse about it that evening, but also to provide feedback in the interim. And so what the main adjustments that you'll see to your packet that differ from June 13th are, one, we now have a resolution adopted by TARPO. At the RPO level, they have consented and are in support of the town accelerating this project. We also have added language throughout the documentation that you'll see there in your packet. With regard to the comprehensive transportation plan, we asked DOT last year to consider an amendment to that. And so we put express language in the documentation there to hopefully compel DOT to review that quicker. And we've also added language for the relocation of 15501 and have it move from its current routing over to Chatham Parkway. And so that was a desire of the board in our conversation. So those are the primary adjustments that have been made. And so what we have this evening is, again, there's kind of a structure memo that kind of outlines what the process is. And in effect, what Chatham Park is seeking to do with this is they want the approval of the town in order to for us to delegate or to authorize them to act on our behalf. Statute allows the town to accelerate. And so what we're looking to do is functionally hold the town financially, kind of a hold harmless financially, to allow Chatham Park investors to construct the road, pay for the road, and then to facilitate the reimbursement. Once the project is green lighted in the STIP, there'll be reimbursements at that time to refund that. Obviously, any road project has phased expenses. And so that's incorporated in this document. As you know, right of way has different years than construction years. Y'all are very familiar with that. And so this would follow suit in the very same way. So what we have is a series of documents. There's one that I want to mention because I think it's worthy of clarification just to avoid any confusion. There's a document there called a development agreement. Despite the similarities in nomenclature, this is not the traditional development agreement that you are accustomed to with zoning. This is simply an instrument to facilitate the reimbursement and the construction of that road. And it's between us and Chatham Park investors. So if there's any question about that, I want to make that abundantly clear on the record that we are not talking about the standard development agreement. It just happens to be labeled the same thing. And so the result of the conversation this evening is simply a resolution of the board. And that resolution does a series of things. If the board is comfortable with accelerating the roadway, it will approve the acceleration and the reimbursement as we've kind of constructed it here. It authorizes me as town manager to submit the documentation here to DOT to move forward with acceleration. It allows me to negotiate and execute the documents with NCDOT and the developer. And what the most important aspect of that is, as this board, I would hope, knows more than anything, is that I'm going to stay within the confines that I'm provided. So obviously there might be some subtle adjustment, but it'll basically be largely what we see tonight. There might be some slight modification for convenience of language, but the intent will remain the same. And then we tried to make the resolution, put that into writing, that we don't necessarily have to bring back to the board to execute the documents, but certainly it's my responsibility to make sure that they're largely intact. We talked about the CTP and the 15501 adjustments. That's also in there to request those and to basically exert any influence that I may have or town staff may have in trying to get those facilitated. There's a different hierarchy of approvals with some of those, particularly with 15501. There's an ASTRO approval there that really the intent of the resolution is that we move forward with it and not necessarily that it's a guarantee, because there are other layers in that. And then overall, simply to delegate our authority by statute to Chatham Park investors to accelerate the road. So that's really where we're at. Mr. Misc and I have been through this, and we've been working with, again, the folks on Chatham Park investor side to provide a document that is as clear as we can be and to protect the interests of the town while we also facilitate the acceleration of the roadway. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions by the board? I would like to ask, if I might, I think the redesignation, highway designation transfer is of great interest to us. And my recollection was that it's not a fait accompli. Obviously, it's going to to take some bureaucracy movement one way or the other. Could you describe, or do you know, is it a complex process or is it just a matter of our asking?
Mayor, I think it's obviously there's a process for it. But I think as long as the roadway, which we have no reason to believe, and that's part of the conversations that we've had, part of the design of Chatham Parkway South. And the other stretches of Chatham Parkway is that it could accommodate the requirements. Obviously, there's a width and load capacities and all that goes into a DOT road. But in order to facilitate the exchange, we are making sure that we're not just saying this. We're making sure that it's intertwined into the design work to make sure this can happen. So I don't think it's a simple foregone conclusion, but I don't understand it to be a complicated process. I think it's something that we can certainly navigate. Patrick Norman and his staff have been great in providing advice on that. Patrick's on the call tonight if you have any questions for DOT. But I think it's kind of a formality of procedure and filing paperwork, and then certainly making sure that the roadway is sufficient to move it.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, I think they did confirm in our last, I was trying to find it exactly, but they did confirm that will be constructed to standards where it could become 15501.
That's correct.
Further questions? I greatly appreciate the map that accompanied the materials. That was so interesting to see how the property of Chatham Park and its affiliates will be utilized in this project. That was very, very interesting.
Mhm.
And not a question, but just to say, again, I think the update of the comprehensive transportation plan is critical. And we certainly don't want to hear later that this road went there, or this feeder road in particular went where it did, because the comprehensive transportation plan was never updated. So I think there's value in following an updated comprehensive transportation plan, but it requires it to be updated. So I understand these are only requests to DOT and there's only so much that we can do, but that's a personal expectation, I'll say.
I'll second that.
So the recommended action on this, if there are no further questions, is a vote on the resolution for the acceleration and reimbursement, the development agreement, and the NCDOT agreements associated with it.
Make a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Shipp. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Any further questions? Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Under miscellaneous this evening, we have our sanitation contract options. And as I indicated in my opening, I was so pleased to get a chance to talk with Bill Davidson. And I know that he's been dealing with Manager Kennedy on this, and we have a lot of information in front of us. But I must tell you that I learned more about recycling today than I ever thought that I could. I mean, everything from pizza boxes to washing out cat food cans. And at first I thought a really wonderful thing might be to write an article for the paper, but we now are blessed with a public information officer. And so I'm going to, with with the manager's permission, I would like to pass on all of this voluminous information, which may seem small and petty, but which is really designed to help us utilize this service that we pay over $500,000 a year for. It is a major part of our expense for us to be able to utilize it better and for the GFL to be more efficient as well. So, so I would love to pass on some of this information to Colby Sawyer and work towards an article that would allow the citizens of Pittsburgh to understand how we can make our service process better.
Mayor, if I may, I completely agree. And I think Colby would be a great resource for that. I know that I believe Mr. Davidson, if I'm not mistaken, forwarded you kind of the what the MRF, the MRF that Sunoco has about recyclables and kind of the do's and don'ts. And we've been asking for kind of a clear document with that. So I'm glad to see that the town is in possession of that and we can push that out. And I think, you know, whether the board wishes to expand services as part of the larger conversation this evening and directing me to go that route, or we want to kind of stand pat with what we have. Either way, I'm happy to work with you, Mayor, as well as Colby to get something pushed out so that folks feel comfortable with what they're recycling. Because as you probably know and have dealt with in the past, Mayor, and your interest in these things, that there's a lot of hopeful recycling where you see a triangle and you throw it in the bin and hope that it sticks when they get to the recycling facility. But we certainly want to be considerate of GFL and any contamination that they would deem when they drop that stuff off. And so I think a greater push of information will be helpful for all of our customers.
Thank you. As far as the continued discussion of the options for our contract, did you want to lead that discussion?
Sure, Madam Mayor. For the public who may not be familiar with what we're talking about here, back in the budget process, we were talking about expanding our services with sanitation and working with our vendor GFL, who has been our provider for a number of years now, in potentially expanding some of our recycling services. And I have had a keen interest in divesting a little bit on the staff side from the yard debris side, simply because of some of the hazards, the efficiencies, and then certainly taking time away from doing other things that we expend and trying to facilitate that program. So work with Bill. We were hopeful to have a contract in place prior to the turn of the fiscal year on July 1st. We weren't able to hit that mark, but obviously trash and recycling service continues as is. But as we have looked at some of these alternatives, we wanted to incorporate any additions if the board and the community felt like that these were worthy to invest in. So to give board a reminder and the general public a refresher, currently for our residential customers, and I'll speak mainly for residential because commercial are opt-ins only. So we do provide commercial service, but you don't have to have commercial service if you're in town. So we'll be speaking mainly to the residential customer in this conversation. So right now, the annual fee for trash and recycle, which is provided with a 95-gallon trash receptacle where that is serviced weekly, so 52 weeks a year. And then we have a 65-gallon recycle container that is serviced bi-weekly, so twice a month. And for that service, we charge our customers on the tax bill $210 a year. And so where that contract price ends up, we had a little over a 4% consumer price index adjustment for this fiscal year applied to the budget. So that's incorporated that. So these numbers that I'm referencing are current numbers. So to get more recycling, you either have to pick it up more frequently or have a bigger container. So with that one, what Mr. Davidson, who's a general manager too with GFL and my POC for our contract, to go from a 65-gallon container to a 95-gallon container and keep the same schedule. So every other week would go from $2.85 a month to $3.75 a month per account. If the town elected to say, let's do every month or do every week, excuse me, but let's keep the same container, adding, doubling the schedule, but keeping the same container will go from $2.85 a month to $6.88 a month. And then to add the yard debris, which we currently don't have any comparison because the town just absorbs that cost. That will be $2.48 a month. And that is for the can itself as well as and that'll be a 95-gallon can. And that will be serviced every other week. So if the board, my recommendation to the board was that we go to the larger can for recycling, keep the same schedule, and then add the 95-gallon can for yard debris. If we were to schedule it that way, what we would have is you'd have your trash every single week. You would have 3 cans instead of 2. One would be a new yard debris can. And then the recycle and yard debris would alternate weeks. So every week you'd roll 2 cans to the street if you had enough to roll it out. And then again, trash with yard debris one week and trash with recycle the next week. So again, I would offer to the board, these are all opt-ins. There's nothing here that is mandated. If the board wishes to approve some variation of this, certainly that's what I will bring back to Mr. Davidson at GFL. But we wanted to be responsive to the board's comments, some of the comments we received from the citizenry about recycling and such. And so those are the numbers we have. And with that, I'll open it up for discussion, if it's so inclined for you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And is there discussion on the alternatives and the options?
Sure. I'll just say I drove around last week on a recycling week up in the area and just kind of see, I'd say probably about 35% of those recycling cans were overflowing, top wouldn't close. And of course we don't know how many people are, once it gets full, then they just put it in the trash instead of recycling. So I think that, for 90 cents a month increase for that larger size container is really good. I'm surprised, honestly, in how much more it costs to do recycling every week. And I think that's probably not worth it, but I think the larger can for recycling would be great. And then really for the yard debris, I think it's a pretty unique thing that the town currently offers. I know when I moved downtown, people just said, put it out on the street and it'll disappear, and it does. So, it's really neat. And I think that's unique, but it's a cost that the town has that we don't really know what that costs to have everyone, to have our guys drive around and pick that up. I think it's a lot safer to do it in the yard bins. I think it's easier maybe to pull the bin around and put it in and then put it out on the road. But I think about our guys a lot, or our staff a lot, as they're picking that up on the side of the road, and it's some danger associated with that, particularly on Hillsborough Street and things like that. So I think it's a good option to have to switch over to that, where everyone has the service. Probably some people don't even know that currently you can put yard debris out on the street and it will get picked up. But I think, Chris, you may comment on this, but I'm curious how much, how long we could sustain the current level of service we have of just picking up yard debris at any point, versus when we might need to stop offering that service or, do it through GFL.
Yeah, I think we're going to be very close to it in the coming years. I don't think it's a this year thing, but certainly as we add houses, and when you start looking at adding 500 to 700 houses a year, which will become our norm very shortly, our staff will not keep up. The contract price for us to do the yard debris for all of our customers. Again, that price will go up because it'll be added by the number of accounts and homes served by that. So it's not like it's a flat cost, but the yard debris contract is for the whole year at our current level is cheaper than one employee in Public Works is. So I think as we look at those and say, all right, I'm going to need more maintenance staff sooner than not. And certainly, you know, one of the calls for concern about maintenance of Public Works is one of the more frequent calls we receive. We are losing some of our efficiencies by driving around, not just from an environmental standpoint, but just from a work product and completion of efforts. You know, you talk about maintenance in the the traffic circle in downtown with the weeds and vegetation. Well, for every time we have to drive a truck around and pick up yard debris, that's the opportunity where our guys aren't out there potentially taking care of that. And so as we grow, it's going to be more and more difficult to sustain the current service we have. As this board knows, and as town staff supports as well, when you have a incorporated limits with a no burning policy, you really have to provide some form of yard debris pickup. Otherwise, people have nowhere to take it. And so unless there's something negotiated with the county about, taking vegetation there, and even that's a little more cumbersome because folks would have to take it by themselves, which is not ideal. So I think moving to GFL, I think it creates some efficiencies and certainly provides our guys a safer environment where they're not picking up that stuff. Basically, I'll borrow from USPS. If it fits, it ships. If you can get it into the thing, they're going to have a mechanical arm for GFL. It's not manually loaded like our guys do. Our guys are manhandling it and throwing it in the back of a Chevy Silverado, and then taking it to our Public Works site, and then taking it back out again manually. So I think there's some inefficiencies there that we can certainly improve upon. And I think for the average homeowner, it'd be more convenient. Even with grass clippings, we get a ton of grass clipping bags. The facilities that we take to, Chatham County, they don't take those bags. So they're convenient for pickup, but they're not helpful on the back end when our staff or other staffs are processing that. So, and one thing while I'm on this, I neglected to mention.
Sorry, just to stop you on that. Are you saying that when our staff picks up those bags with grass clippings in it, they got to take and then like dump out the bags?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's convenient to pick up because it's grass clippings are hard to pick up otherwise, but we have to unload them from the bags itself. We can't process it when they're in the bags.
Even the compostable paper bags?
They wouldn't, I know Chatham County does not allow bags at all of any kind.
Okay.
It has to be the raw material. It has to be limbs. It has to be sticks. And one thing I would note too, my recommendation with this is not to affect our leaf collection policies and program. That we would still have, we have the equipment for that. We know that, during leaf season, you'd overrun a 95-gallon bin in a certain week. So we still plan to maintain that system throughout the late fall and winter months that we typically have for that. So that would just be a service that we continue to provide that wouldn't be affected. But if you put leaves in that bin, no harm, no foul.
I actually think that's a good idea to go with the larger container and then to add this yard debris. I think that's a great idea. And then, but of course, on another note, which has nothing to do with this, in terms of the debris that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people put on the curb from household products. So they still supposed to call town hall and ask them to come and pick that up. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Like
We still
things like
pick
that.
up white goods
Yes.
and those items as well. We ask folks to try to give us a call. Again, our guys are out and about and they kind of see that stuff as it is. If someone calls town hall, they'll call Carrie, and then Carrie will report that to Public Works. But a lot of the Public Works stuff, they just kind of see it and take care of it themselves. But again, that's a great point, Commissioner Baldwin, that we will continue to maintain that service as well.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting that some of us, I live on a large lot and usually put my debris at the back of the lot. But I expect once the service is available, I'm probably going to use it more than I think I will right now. So.
I do think too, I see, we're also considering a longer term of renewal, which I think is good. But it's unfortunate this time that they didn't get us this information during the regular budget process. Because we could have looked at this in the context of a larger budget process. It's effectively a tax increase in that we're doing something that we currently do in the cost, adding cost to everyone in town for it. So I think that's better looked at in the context of the entire budget. With that being said, I think it's reasonable, but it's certainly adding cost to everyone just outside of the budget season because of the delays from GFL.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I think that's a very fair point and something we certainly tried to avoid, but here we are. If the board, again, GFL has requested a start date for these add-on items of January 1st. They said they could accommodate that sooner. I think we'd like to maybe have something started in a few months. I know that it takes time to procure the cans, get the cans deployed, pick up the other cans if that's where we want to go. But if the board wanted to look at this from a budgetary context, there's nothing that compels the board to act now. If you said, hey, we know we want to do this, but we want to make sure that there's proper, cost considerations with it, the board would be, I could get a contract drafted up where this would go into effect July 1 of next year. So there won't be a budget impact on this year if you wanted to wait for that. So again, with these add-ons as alternatives, there's some flexibility there. And I think GFL will be willing to work with us on our schedule if something like a mid-year quote unquote price increase was concerning. We could simply push this and have the contract say, continuation of services status quo for fiscal year 22-23, but with commencement of the next fiscal year, which would be July 1st of 2023. This is what the town expects to have. And then there's a price associated with that. We can go ahead and lock that in.
I guess to clarify, I'm still okay. I think November, like you mentioned, is good.
Okay.
Just for future 5 years from now, we'd like to get the information on time. So
Yeah.
you know that.
I'm thinking.
10-4.
When I first came here in 2015 to this government post, I was just amazed, $365,000 for the waste contract. So you can see how it's gone up in what is relatively short period of time.
And Mayor Perry, again, what does that come to per year? 500,000, more than 500,000?
Now, yes. I can't remember specifically, Chris Kennedy, is it 525 or?
It's in that relative neighborhood, Mayor. That's horseshoes close in term for the conversation.
Okay, good, thank you. And since the manager went into some detail with respect to how we can utilize our services better, let me say that Bill Davison said today that the biggest reason that recyclables might not actually end up in the recycle stream and might end up in the waste stream instead is those people who very methodically put their recyclables in a plastic bag. And that whole bag is just going to go into the waste stream. It's not going to be recycled because the people at the staging area, the sorting area, cannot take the time to open the bags and all of that. So the most wasteful component that we have is people who put their recyclables in a plastic bag, because then they don't get recycled. So I thought that was interesting. Does the board feel that they are ready to make a decision?
No. I have some remaining concerns, and Mr. Kennedy, I thank you very much for answering some of my questions. I remain concerned that notwithstanding your point that we're a small customer, in 5 years, we'll be a bigger customer. And I'm not comfortable agreeing to a 5-year contract with a service provider that is unresponsive to questions about aesthetics of the colors of the bins and unresponsive to concerns about the imperative that we all reduce our pollution emissions in transportation. And I'm aware of what GFL and waste industries before them are doing with compressed natural gas as a vehicle fuel. And I'm also aware that there are transitions happening in the marketplace right now that make me very unsatisfied with the response that, well, you know, maybe that's not something we can influence. I think that we can influence it because the market is transitioning. And I would like to hear their plan to go with that market transition and what they're planning to do. It's going to be in the very near future that vehicle transportation, especially heavy freight, like trash collection, where the vehicles are moving all day long, and the duty cycle is many, many, many hours a day. Those vehicles will be more cost effective for conversion to electrification. So we do have the power as a customer, and I think that we need to ask them to explain to us what their plan is. I would very much appreciate that. And I would be prepared to give it closer consideration and perhaps a vote, you know, once we've heard from them about that. And again, I think that their color scheme is not one that I would like to see continue in this town, especially if we're going to sign a long-term contract where they're going to make capital investments in bins. They can order the bins to our color specification. Other companies do it. I'm aware that some of these bins are manufactured in North Carolina, so I don't think it's that hard. I used to be in the recycling business. My very first salary job out of college was as a sanitation supervisor and coordinator of recycling for a community actually larger than our community. A community of 13,000 people. So yeah, that's my stance. And I very much appreciate the hard work you've put into this, but I do think that the company can be more responsive to us, and that's what I'd like to hear.
Commissioner Bonitz, I appreciate those comments. And I think my response to you was looking at the industry, you know, and you may be more familiar than I, but I don't know that, I think GFL would be happy to respond to the question. I just don't know that there's a discernible difference between vendors. And if that's kind of a sticking point of looking at a comparison of vendors saying, okay, if we are looking at a contract renewal based upon clean technology in your transportation fleet, you know, that's a determining factor. I don't know that Republic or Waste Industry or Waste Management or some comparable competitor of GFL, I'm unaware that they're any more competitive than GFL would provide something. I think the information can be provided, but if it's posted as some sort of critical decision point, I'm not sure that we're going to find a greener pasture if it were. And then on the can color, do you have something in mind in terms of a color combination that I can relate to GFL?
Colors that aren't fluorescent.
Okay.
I mean, blue is a common color for recycling. And green or brown for trash or yard debris. That seems, I think that's kind of like what we used to have, minus the blue.
I'll
So-
just mention one thing also. I'm not too in favor of a 5-year contract on this. I know they gotta spend money on our containers and all like this, but that's one concern I have. And as far as having a third waste container at your house, I mean, what's gonna be next, a fourth or fifth one? I'm not in favor of a yard waste container at this time. If you go around and see right now that we're building houses in density, where are these containers gonna go? That's, they're gonna stay on the side of the road? Just a concern of mine, but if we do anything, and I brought this up months ago, but I'm happy to wait to the next budget year. But if I vote on anything, I vote for the larger recycling bins, and that would be it.
Well, it sounds like that we still have some settling in to do and some thought and some questions to be answered. So, so why don't we use our upcoming time to be able to do that? Can I take at this point a thought about how many of you would like to go on a tour of the recycling facility in Raleigh? Commissioner Vose?
Depending on the time and date, I'm
Okay,
interested, sure.
okay. Pamela? No?
I don't think I could probably manage to get to
Okay.
that.
And
I got 2 nice dumpsters in the back of the restaurant. I'm fine. I'll check them out every day.
so it looks like 3 of us, and then me, since I don't count towards the issue of open meetings law. So, okay. I will report back on that. Is there anything else to come before the meeting tonight? I did want to say one thing, and that was following our meeting with Greensboro officials. I think we received a copy of the 1-year report by Greensboro for in compliance with the SOC regarding the 1,4-dioxane and PFAS. I must say that it's complicated. It's a very technical report, but it is very much worth your while to read. And I don't know if everybody got it, but I'll make sure that we can.
Thank you. I don't recall seeing it, so
Okay.
I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I thought they even, it's on Greensboro's website also, but we can make sure to send it out. And I think really the highlights there's a lot of, it's like 35 pages long of a lot of the test results and things like that. But the highlight for me was really that they're narrowing down the polluters and working with the polluters. And so, you know, each release, unfortunately, is unfortunate, but it allows more granular view of where that's coming from. And so they've identified 2 of the largest ones have stopped doing it. One installed treatment and one stopped making that product. And then they've identified 7 others that are less of polluters, I guess. And they're working with them also. So you know, I think a lot of progress has been made because of that SOC, and you know, because they want to do the right thing. And so it's good to check out.
It is interesting too to see the, you know, Greensboro's drinking water has 5 sources, and it goes through those 5 that ultimately discharge into the Osborne wastewater plant. And it was sort of interesting to just see how all of that works in connection with what Commissioner Shipp has just said. Yes, it is true that the city identified 9 significant industrial users that had greater than 100 units in the last reporting. They were just inspecting once a year, and now they're inspecting 3 times a year when a company reaches that particular deadline ceiling. So they are certainly doing a great deal more than I certainly realized. But I also think that I'd like to tune into some of the finer points. Like, I know that composite testing is not as valuable as individual testing. And I think that the Haw River Assembly has been critical of that methodology. But I think that we are definitely making progress, and but we still have a ways to go. So. Is there anything further from the board? Anything further from Mr. Kennedy?
The only thing was what Commissioner Vose had indicated, to maybe have a more discussion regarding that, the Sanford situation. And I think we may need to sort of schedule that for the next meeting or two.
Yes, thank you.
If that's possible, Mr. Kennedy. If the board agrees with that.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, certainly, if a request, and obviously you joining with Commissioner Vose, if a request comes from 2 or more members of the board, I will put something on the agenda. So if you'd like that on August 8th, I'd be happy to add that to that. Is there any detail or specificity you can offer to help me with what you want to discuss so staff can prepare in advance of that and see what we can best do to facilitate that conversation?
I would say a real-time update at that time. Just simply some time for us to discuss it and see what one another's reservations are, concerns are, or things that we generally feel comfortable about or do not.
Yeah, I might chime in by saying, I think it'd be interesting to hear what are the issues of discussion between us and Sanford.
Mhm.
Well, right now we're going through a data collection period where both sides we're going through, okay, what are your assets? What is your debt service? A large part of what you pull out of a CAFR or an audit report. Some of those, details in that. And then obviously as we look for the technical side of it. And so really what that is, I'm trying to see if I got some notes here.
Well, rather than put you on the spot now, Mr. Kennedy, if
Yeah.
we prepare and then just have a presentation of those issues, and so we can understand them better, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. If I may, Commissioner Vose, when you say a real-time status update.
Things are going to change between now and 2 weeks from now. So just wherever we're at.
Virtually none.
Nothing is going to change between now and then?
Nothing's going to change. The way this contract is set up is there's a consultant engineer that is working as an intermediary between the 2 municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a notice to proceed on a contract for a scope of work. And right now that scope of work is still in draft form. And so the 2 parties have to agree on the scope of work. And once that is green lighted, then there's an issuance of a notice to proceed on the work. There's a 90-day deliverable and a 180-day deliverable. The 90-day deliverable is scoped, intended to say, we're 90 days into this. It's now likely October at that time. Here's the information that we have. And what it is setting up is we're taking the background information that we have. Again, the data that's collected by both parties, and then running that through to make sure that we have an understanding of what the expenses are, because it is my interpretation that's really, in addition to capacities, it's the expense that really is going to push this thing forward or not. And so if the boards see this and say, okay, we have now reached a breaking point where, okay, we see the benefit or we don't see the benefit financially, I think that was what will be the critical factor in this effort. And that's intended to be delivered at 90 days. And then there's 180 days to finish that report, to provide you greater information with that. I can certainly, at the next meeting, if we have an agreed upon scope of work with the city of Sanford, I'll be happy to present that to the board.
I think that would be good, Mr. Kennedy. That would give us a good idea in reference. Would that be good?
Yes,
think?
yeah.
I think that would be good. Yes.
And maybe an outline of how the procedure will carry from there, like the deadlines you just cited. It would be good to know how the procedure will go in the future.
Yes, ma'am. I will get that together. And if we are in agreement at the staff levels, we will have that on August 8th. And I don't see a reason why we wouldn't absolutely have that by the 22nd, but I think we can pull that together by the 8th.
And included in that would be capacity. You just mentioned capacity also, right?
I don't know that capacity will be included or not.
Okay.
That's a question we've asked and something that is a part of the greater negotiation about what expectations can be had with capacities.
I think, okay, I'll save my comments, but thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just say on that too, that when we went down to Sanford and met with Mayor Mann and his staff, I'd actually volunteered to be a liaison if necessary. And he said he didn't think that was good. And, you know, essentially from a perspective of let staff work and, you know, come back to us at decision points. And so I like to be a lot more involved, I think, than, you know, I like to be involved, but I think this is something where we do need to also let staff work, bring us certain decision points. But certainly if anyone has, you know, new reservations or questions or concerns, you know, since we've said that we want to go down this road, I think it's important to bring up for staff and their work on this. But you know, we got to let them work also.
Yeah, that's right. And I think giving the board and the public a snapshot of what are those things being deliberated and discussed would allow us to have that process to convey policy level concerns.
I just would like to talk about it more than once as we proceed. Sort of as you just said, what do we have for concerns? How are we going to come together or not? How do we feel as individuals and as a board?
Thank you.
And to each of those comments, I think from the staff perspective, and I appreciate Commissioner Bonitz saying, you know, things will certainly come as we get information, and I respect that. Again, right now we're in a period of collecting data and information and putting that together. So there's not a lot to report on quite yet, because we're not at the point of manipulating or using that data for better information. I do think it'll be more than just a one-off thing for the board to look at. But I would say any comments that you may have about this, I would very much encourage you, whether it doesn't have to be during this meeting, but certainly offline, relay that to me and as a group from the board to me, because there's going to be a lot of nuance in this. And if there's a preference of the board, I very much need to be aware of what that is, so I can try to fight for that on our end. So I appreciate any and all comments you can provide to me.
Very good. All right. Does the board have any further comments, concerns, questions? I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn, and I think this sets a record.
In recent months, for sure. I move that we adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Bonitz. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Shipp, thank you. Those in favor, please stand. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
We hope the rest of your
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
is wonderful.
Yes.